Welcome to Cut Daisies and Unicorns. This is a Phil and Steve edition, so you never know what's going to happen, so you're going to have to be able to pay attention, keep your ears ready, keep your eyes ready for those that are watching, and be ready. I don't even know what's coming right now. So Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah. Hey, you know what? You got a sunshiny Thursday in Chicago.
I know.
Yeah, so you got to be energized about that.
It is. It brings me great joy to have the sun.
As much as I enjoy cloudy weather and when things are a little bit, kind of mournful and overcast, the good news is it doesn't send me into a bad mood to have sunshine.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
So even though you'd like that little bit of a gloom, doesn't mean that it throws you off. Sometimes it throws me off if it's gloomy too long.
Well, and I think that, there's a seasonal disorder,
right,
according to that. And I would
it's
say
called SAD.
Yeah.
Seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah. And I will say that winter can bear on me like that. I remember coming to the end of winter this year and being like walking up the 3 flights of stairs to the Earth and Warehouse studio. And I was just like, why does it seem harder to walk up these stairs than it did 6 months ago or 3 months ago or whatever? And then, but once the weather broke, I'm like, I needed this. Yeah. And so I suppose that's part of learning yourself, right?
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
So as far as... I got a couple things.
All right.
Yeah, I got a couple things. I was thinking we should talk about some big rock stuff going on in our lives. The other thing is I've got a couple stories to tell. Yeah. And then we wanted to do super fan shout-outs.
Okay.
All right. So, I mean, where we go in between all that.
You never know.
You never know. But what we should do is let's take a break. Do you have your phone on you?
I do.
You should take a picture of our fan art. And Lynn, the artist formerly known as Caitlin, who would be added to the list of superfans. She actually liked the Facebook page.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And so if you can get that to your computer, then we can show it on the big screen, and so people can take a close-up view of fan art. And for those of you who missed the last episode, we finished at the end of the episode to be able to talk about the fan art that was sent in because of the blank pages and all the stuff going on. And so we wanted to put that out there that if you wanted to. Now what we're going to do is we're going to show you the technology and ability that can take place for fan art.
Right.
So if you want to sit your kids down and you want to say, hey, let's draw a bunch of daisies and unicorns and get that right. I mean, it's cut daisies and unicorns. It's not daisies and cut unicorns. We don't want dismembered unicorns showing up.
No, we don't.
So, but you can do that, and then we'll be able to show it on the podcast, and we'll feel really good about that. Yeah. And so, But as far as everything that's going on, man, it's a beautiful Thursday. We, once again, fall into a technology difficulty where we were thinking we were getting all ahead. For anybody out there that wants to know, you can't run display out from your Atom Mini Pro to an iMac. It's just, it's not possible.
Just so everybody else out there knows, if you're running an Atom, can't use the iMac as a monitor. Which doesn't make sense to me. Apple, why can't you get to be able to play with other technology? They always have to be so, tightly wound.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's our first fan art, and kudos to Lynn for her ability to go where no one's gone before,
right?
And draw up. I was talking to her on Sunday and telling her how thankful I was for this piece of art, and she filled me in on the process
Yeah.
and what it took. And with that, yeah, she let me know it's multimedia. It took some time, and didn't get the opportunity to be able to speak into her life that good art does take time.
Right.
Yeah,
It
it's
does.
not something that you can like just kind of push out there. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Which is that is a good thought though about art. I mean, because art, is across multi mediums, right? And I even, when I'm listening to people who have created music, and they say, I mean, there's some people who, I mean, it takes years to create a song, and then there's some people who are like, yeah, I think I wrote it, wrote lyrics, music, put down a first, like on the same day.
oh yeah,
And there's so sometimes like that inspiration gets out there and you're like, no, like this is like needs to be there. And it's kind of like real quick.
yeah,
Sometimes it's like, like good songs and good thing. I mean, like also might take a while.
yeah.
And it's okay on both sides, right?
Have you ever considered the deliberation between the first album and the second album of artists? And it's kind of like when you have movies that come out, i.e., The Matrix.
Right.
Should they have even done Matrix 2 or Matrix 3?
Right.
I mean, I understand with the godology of the picture of everything that was going on in The Matrix,
Right.
that they wanted to hit a trinity of Matrix movies. But it could be argued that, I mean, other than it brought them in money and they did that, but as far as like the time that I'll never get back in my life from having watched them,
Agreed.
and yet I'll gladly give more time of my life to watch the first one over again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, the first one. I mean, not only was it was a good storyline.
Yeah.
It was well written. Good vision. But there were so many cutting edge things that they were doing as far as the shoot and all of the all of the technical work. I mean, like there were some groundbreaking things that were done there.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like, but I think that one could have stood alone. Like you didn't need to continue.
Right.
But sometimes they like, all right, well, if this one's successful, then, at least we can get a successful 2, possibly a 3, right?
See, and that's where you have to start asking the question, is capitalism going to ruin art?
Right.
Just for the sake of making an extra buck? So, I mean, and we could go into the new film releases of J.R.R. Tolkien's work concerning The Hobbit and
Lord of the Rings.
Okay, so Lord of the Rings, spot on.
Right.
When they took The Hobbit and divided it up into 3 movies, and yeah, I'm like, really?
Right.
We didn't need that.
Yeah, especially when there was, I think there was 1980s, they had the first version of The Hobbit, which I thought was pretty well done. I mean,
Are you talking about the animated one?
No, there's one that was maybe I think it was 8. I don't know. I'd have to look back, but
all right,
yeah, because that one was done. I mean, and that's sometimes what they do. I mean, I think Netflix is now trying to develop a whole Lord of the Rings series on Netflix.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, so we're going to see what they're going to do. We're going to see what they're going to do with it. That's always the question. And
yeah,
I think what they're even trying to do is even try to make it more like Lord of the Rings. Not Lord of the Rings. More like what's the HBO series, the
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Oh,
so they're going to try to bring like some possible like nudity into, and I'm like,
I don't want
like,
to see a naked hobbit.
Yeah, I'm like, where are you going to go with this, Netflix? Because I'm not quite sure. You know, I don't think J.R.R. Tolkien was like, oh, like, I don't think that. I mean, so they're trying to recreate it. I'm gonna save my, like criticism of it until after it comes out and see it. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
But if people are wondering,
Yeah.
I believe that there is a Tolkien biography movie that's out there
so.
that you could be able to probably catch on one of the services and take a look at that. Yeah. So we digress, but I come back to sophomore album after part of the reason why first albums do really well is because a lot of songwriters, what they're doing is they've had their whole life that they've been working through songs and writing, and then they put out the best of what they have at that point. But the amount of time in between all of the songs accumulated for their life in the first album, then when they go to the second album, and typically, and I didn't know this about the music industry, but I mean, you're talking about a 1 year shelf life on any album created. Usually the industry is saying, all right, now it's time to write more and it's time to push it out. Actually, John Mark McMillan ran into incredible distress in doing that when he actually signed a record deal, put out an incredible piece of art, and then just in his head as an artist couldn't even wrap himself around pushing out this other stuff, and then eventually figured out how to get out of the contract, I think, and then went totally on his own as far as putting stuff together, and the stuff he puts out is self-produced now. And but art and time, there's just realities that it takes time.
Yeah, but I even think about when we were looking at artists and we were thinking about the time, even first albums compared to later albums. I mean, I go back to like the Avett Brothers when they were originally on a smaller label, right? And then when they started to pick up traction, then they, I think Rick Rubin came in and he was helping them out with the production of the other ones. And some of their albums continued to get better too. And I'm not saying it was because of Rick Rubin, but I'm saying sometimes I think also the art that you're putting together. I mean, I like early albums of the Avett Brothers.
Yeah.
And I also like later albums of the Avett Brothers. But I think that there's some of those intricacies that you start to also build on sophomore, releases even further on. That there's some of those things that you also build on, as an artist. So
I just wonder if it has to do with the survival of, like, what's going on with as an artist and we're talking music artist right now, is there the ability to be able to survive your sophomore album and continue to stay on? I think in the case of the Avett Brothers, they spent a lot of time on the road. And actually the catalyst of them taking off had to do with their bass player, where like they were local and regional, but then the bass player's like, no, we need to get out on the road. And the bass player knew that in regards to that what was happening was that there was this need to hone the skills.
Right.
And that pushed them to the West Coast, where they did a bunch of work on college campuses, and just getting out there and doing this stuff for a long time for no money. Right. Honing the skills. I also believe that both brothers are really, really committed to a self-evolution. They're growing.
Right.
And probably would even be considered, I think, in folk rock as some of the current prophets The work that they're doing is just an incredible work. Being able to see the sign of the times and be able to declare that, and a lot of artists have moved into that in a response of what we've been going through culturally as a society here in the U.S.
Yeah. But going back to looking at those, like your early albums, I mean, there's a reason why you have people that are called one-hit wonders, right?
Right. The 90s,
because,
the whole decade.
Yeah, there's something about like, what you were talking about. You put so much energy into this debut album that you're saying like we're just dumping everything.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, there might be something that gets picked up. It might get played, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't know what to do with this. They want us to write more. They want us, and then you get into those forced moments, and then you don't hear from people again. And I think that's part of record industry too. But I think that so I think that's where you also have people who fall off the map.
Yeah.
Like, where did they go? I don't know.
Don't have any idea.
Right.
Well, and I just wonder then if you start talking about the one percenters of the one percenters. Mm-hmm. So you got Dave Grohl, Foo Fighters. I mean, he's like, even if they would have known they would have part of the success that they have as a group, he said that he would thinking about the name more seriously. Right. But again, here's a voice, here's a guy. Where does that come from? Well, we're talking about the art of Picasso. We're talking about the artwork of Leonardo da Vinci. Right. We're talking, we're talking one percenters of one percenters. And my old mortgage boss always used to say, "Hey, Steve, if do you consider yourself to have above average intelligence?" And I said, "Well, I never really thought about it, but sure." He goes, "So does 100% of everybody else."
That's probably the truth right there.
And so like when you start thinking about actually just let's skip over to another rock. I did get, for our listeners, I got 2 actually authentically historic books on the Knights Templar.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, and one reads more as a narrative, and the other one reads as a true history book. And so as I was thinking about it this morning, I was thinking about it, I'll be drawn to the narrative because I'm drawn to the story. Yeah. And that's where I'll spend my time, and it's why I like The Curse of Oak Island, because even the older brother, Rick, he's like, the true treasure here isn't the gold and the silver that we'll find. He goes, the true treasure is this story, and the story evolving of what has been unknown. We're writing history right now because we're discovering things that hadn't been discovered before. Yeah. And so I thought, man, now there's a guy, multimillionaire, who can be able to tell you about true value and that there's value in the story. But I go back to that for the Knights Templar, so now I'm not chasing down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theorists and what has been lost and what things are subjective to, hey, is this real? Who lost what? How's this all working out? And stuff like that. But being able to start doing the research and gaining knowledge on this. But in that one history book, oh my gosh, I'm reading it and I'm like putting into a file. Yeah, I don't know where that is. Yeah, I don't know who that is. Yeah, I don't know. You even know how to say this. You know how you read when you're like, you hit a word that you don't know how to say, and you're not like, I'm like, I really don't want to dig out my laptop right now and start,
how do you pronounce?
Or even, what does this word mean? I'm like, I've made it this far in life without knowing what that word means. I'll put it into context of the whole and be able to figure it out, And so anyway, and I was thinking about that. I'm like, man, there's a kid in high school, Jeff Hess, that was my debate partner. And this kid read through the high school library in his 4 years in high school, including the encyclopedias. And that's where I started thinking about above average intelligence. I'm like, people like that, they've got compartments where like all of it makes sense and they're filing and putting this stuff away. Me, I have to start with a plain sheet of paper and put a diagram, 1099.
I didn't even know you were on the debate team.
Oh, I've got things to share that you don't know about me today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you call yourself a master at it?
Ah, boom, boom, boom. Actually, as a sophomore in high school, I got to make it to semifinals with a team.
Wow.
And this goes to Caitlin's love of who's the singing guy that she absolutely loves?
Harry Styles.
Harry Styles. Harry Styles has a tat that says, "You booze, you lose." So this one guy was supposed to argue first negative, but he had too many Coronas the night before, so he wasn't feeling good. So he's like acting like a puss and just being like, I don't feel good. So Mrs. Pitcher, she's like, "Cole, you want in on this?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And so yeah, I got to do that.
Wow.
And then they defunded that portion. And so my junior and senior year, we didn't get to do it because
There's no funding.
There was no funding. This is 1983. Yeah.
Wow.
When the debate class came to junior high in 8th grade and basically just did a promo and saying, hey, this is a part of the extracurricular that you could have. And at that time, I knew that I was making plans to be able to go into public speaking service. At that time, the idea was to become a preacher pastor. And so I'm like, I need that skill set to be able to be a part of what's going on. So, I mean, if you're going to go with like euphemisms, so I no longer played trombone.
Yeah.
But dropped trombone for debate. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I learned something new. Maybe you learned something new out there too about Steve. So Steve's a debater.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I think early on I was never on a debate team, but I would always, somebody would say something, and I would always take the opposite side no matter what.
That only makes you the devil in the devil's advocate. That's all that does.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my wife still says I do that today, but
You're contrarian?
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm always like, it can be boring if everyone's always agreeing on everything. So why not take the opposite side on it and see what you can do with it?
Actually, I was thinking about how much taking the opposite is within our humanity. And just to lob this out there, we're not going to get to the end of this part of the discussion, but I just wanted to say that, I think we find within humanity that people do travel to opposite sides. Now, we can go down the path of dualism. We can go down the path of tribalism. We're not going to do that. But what I was thinking about, I was in Target the other day, and I saw these Cubs hats. And I'm in Chicago now. And I was like, man, should I pick up a Cubs hat? And I'm like, no. I'm like, no. I haven't cared about the Cubs up to this. 54 years of my life, and I've never cared about the Cubs. Why would I want to buy? Then I looked at the Blackhawks. I'm like, over the Red Wings? No. Right. And so I'm like, and then I was like, well, should we talk about sports? And I'm like, no. And so then I was thinking, I'm not really for anybody in sports, but I know that I can be against some things in sports. Like. So what does that tell us about our humanity? Again, a contrarian view. Well, why wouldn't you pick a team? Well, why would I want to pick a team?
Why do you have to?
I don't want to or have to. And I'm not going to shell out $12 or $15 or $18 for a cap that, even though I would wear a cap.
Right.
Oh my. Anyway, these are the musings.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's a musing.
It's amusing to me. So, and I think that's where, so why, where are we going to spend our time talking about things? Well, we're not going to talk about things that aren't going to matter to, most of our listeners are probably also not like, oh, sports teams, yay, let's talk. Like, we haven't had anybody who's like, can we talk about sports for a moment? No, like, we don't have people who are listening who are like, sports.
There's a couple people. Nick Prenger and Chris Thompson like to follow that. And for as much as Bill would ever catch, an episode here or there, he and Leslie, I don't know if Leslie's ever heard an episode. So, whatever. It just is one of those things where when we're, thinking about things, I find it interesting that, to muse would be to think or to ponder, right?
Mm-hmm.
A musing are things that you don't think about.
Right.
So, according to the English scholars, the idea of laughing or jesting would not be the point of musing.
Right.
Yeah. So, but actually, we draw a very strong comedic line on musing over the things.
Yeah.
The puppies in the background.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well. It's all right.
All right.
So, since full disclosure, Thursday, one of the things that I talked about that I'm like, we need to shout out to our super fans. Yeah. My Aunt Linda is a super fan.
Yeah.
Every time there's an episode, she clicks on it and she's there. And so I just wanted to say...
She was there for the live, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And just wanted to say, hey, Aunt Linda, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being involved and supporting, and hopefully we bring some chuckles to your life. And so we appreciate that. And of course, I think Heather's a super fan.
She is, yeah. She likes to comment, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and commenting is good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I think Caitlin's getting there. She made fan art.
Right.
What else do you need? She's gone the extra step and came our way with that.
She says she's usually listening when she's taking the bus from her place to the salon. So,
oh, yeah.
So, Caitlin, if you're listening or watching,
yeah.
Hey.
My mom's a super fan.
Yeah.
She thinks we're crazy.
Obviously.
She does. She thinks we're crazy. And but there's a new super fan.
Yeah.
And it's Athena. From Urbandale.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do a shout out to Athena because I have fond memories. When I was at Gloria Day, Athena was in the congregation, and she would come in on Sunday mornings, and Elaine there would make cookies for the people who were attending.
Right.
So if you were too fast in getting out the door and you didn't have breakfast for the kids, then it'd take care of the grumbly tumblies and stuff. So Athena would walk into the Family Life Center and she'd be like, "Hey, cowbell," and I will forever have Athena, you hollering at me. And so I wanted to tell you something you didn't know about me.
Yeah.
I've given flute lessons for over 3 years.
What? Why did I not know this?
See?
Flute lessons?
Flute lessons.
I didn't even know you played the flute.
I don't.
All right. So you give flute lessons and you don't play the flute. There's got to be a story here.
And that's the part that I wanted to I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Athena came up to me one time and she she told me that she had played flute in the past at Glory Day, and I said, like, for what? Oh, either pre-service or offering and stuff like that. I'm like, all right, right on. And she then told me that it didn't always work out well to have an accompanist, and so, but she was wondering if she could do a special playing of her flute. And I said, hey, Athena, why don't you pick out a couple songs and have me listen to it? And so that began the process. And so every Sunday morning after I got done with warm-up rehearsal in the Family Life Center, Athena, we would have about a half-hour break before the service started. And Athena would have been set up in the youth room and have her music out, have gone through her stuff, and she had been practicing, and I would listen to the work that she was putting into her instrument. And so then I would talk to her about, what things were going well and what things weren't. And when you're like, I didn't know you knew how to play flute, and I'm like, I don't, but I'm musical. And so I could be able to tell based on the timing whether she was getting, she was picking out songs that I knew. And so we went through a 3-year, at least 3. It could have been 4 or 5 time frame to be able for her to be able to practice. And then Marcia Fries started up the flute ensemble. And so Athena joined the flute ensemble, and then she would use Sundays, and I would listen, and Marcia and I both would help Athena in her flute playing. And so after about a year, then during, I'm sure it was Advent, she came in and she did a pre-service, and then as she continued to hone her skills, then she did some offertory stuff and things like that. And yeah, the congregation is very supportive of her in her endeavors.
Very nice.
And I can add flute, instrumentalist, teacher, instructor to my resume, which, I mean,
It's a great piece to add to the resume.
yeah. Yep.
Like, I can help. I always appreciate Athena. I mean, she's very easy to talk to. She's she approaches without fear, and and yeah, so she's a great lady.
Yep. We'll hear more, and people will see Athena probably comment in the Facebook event sections and stuff like that. She goes, "You guys are funny," which actually, what I really appreciate about Athena is her ability to be able to just call it the way she sees it. And she does not hold back on anything. And so I'm sure that we're going to get some comments from her, on this episode as we do an Athena, call out, and just be like, hey, thanks for sharing, liking, and subscribing, Athena. We're glad to add you to the Cut Daisies and Unicorns tribe.
Right. Yeah. We're grateful that you found it, that you're listening now, and that you'll continue to spread the word.
Yeah. Share it on your Facebook feed. Tell people about it. It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So where are we going next? Got some super fans.
Yep.
And we're always looking for new super fans if you'd like to be a super fan.
Well, dare I say, I think one of our super fans, almost comically so, because he has delighted in just being, always making a comment. Adam Bugos.
Right.
We got to include him in on that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he does like to comment too.
Yeah, and his comments are worthwhile. Definitely funny. And Adam, by the time you hear the trailer, it will be less than 24 hours until Adam becomes my son-in-law.
Right.
He is the appointed son-in-law to be.
He's the appointed.
As long as everything works out all right, and so that's happening in this time frame, And he will be marrying my daughter, Micaela, on Saturday, May 15th. We were looking at venues over a year ago. And Michaela's like, we were kicking around dates and stuff like that. Dad, what do you think? I'm like, what do I think? What does it matter? I said, here's a bit of advice someone told me. Is like, if you're going to get married, don't get married within the first 7 days of the month. Because at least then when you get to the month, you have 7 days to prepare for the anniversary.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
So I told him that, and then I said, "Well, are you guys thinking April, May, June? What are you thinking and stuff like that?" And Michaela's like, I don't know. We're thinking maybe April or May or something, And I'm like, well, why wouldn't you do the 15th of May? That's 515. From the 515, getting married on the 515. How can you forget about the 515?
Right.
So they landed on that. And then COVID hit.
Of course, COVID.
So all that shopping for venues, boom, out the door. Maybe there's a celebration coming up later down the road, but because of the attendance restrictions and things like that, they got on Airbnb and looked for a wedding destination place, and so we're traveling to Winter, Wisconsin.
Winter.
It's a place. It's not a season there.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it always winter there?
It's not. It's not. As is with Wisconsin, there's a lot of clear water, a lot of lakes and stuff like that. And so they got a place. They're having the wedding party come in a small group of family, very limited. And then, we're doing that whole thing on Saturday and then driving back on Sunday. And I'm looking forward to getting into my natural rhythm back in Chicago after that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's taken some time, and
Yep.
yeah, and when big life moments like that happen, like you get focused on that, even if even if it's just a small piece, but it's a big life moment. So
yeah. Well, and there were,
consumes.
appropriate introductions needed to take place, and so Amy met Steph and Michaela's mom, and then we traveled to Davenport to meet Adam's mom and dad, which was a delightful, delightful time. But I mean, you don't want to show up at like a big life event and not know these people, and like all of a sudden the event becomes the introduction.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, it took some travel time to be able to do that and navigate that. But I won't lie, looking forward to hanging out with my kids. Mike and Micaela. Well, obviously Micaela will be there, and
I think so.
hopefully Adam too. Actually, as we speak, I think they're traveling today.
Yeah,
they're getting there, and stuff, and yet, I mean, she's not a little girl, she's not 8, she's not 13. I mean, she's in her later 20s, and so it's just really in my heart I move into this celebration of the woman that she is,
right.
and the path that she walked into becoming this woman. And as excited as I look backwards on my life, I'm as excited about the things that she'll accomplish and what she'll become, because she's not going to be the same person that she is on this day. Yeah. And so, yeah, big stone.
You going to keep the service tight, or is it going to just be like, this is, a day to celebrate and we'll see what happens?
Yeah, I haven't gotten, I mean, Michaela and Adam both are just real, like, laid back on the whole thing and stuff. And so I think that what you would call it is a contemporary traditional, meaning that I'll use traditional vows in a contemporary language. As I've been thinking about it, I just want, to be able to acknowledge the people who have influenced both Adam and Micaela in their life to coming to this place.
Right.
Acknowledge that there is an unseen deity that is going to be available to them for guidance and direction. And then, just move into these things where they've been living committed wholly to each other. Just comes underneath the sovereignty of law, because this is what the country says needs to happen. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they're a married couple, but, hey, we're going to celebrate and be excited about that. And, be able to, you carve out that time, and that's a dedication of this is how much you mean, to us as the family that's around you and stuff. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thinking about the and that's a good language terminology to talk about traditional but contemporary language. And because we know a lot of the traditional language, even the giving away of the bride, right?
Oh, you're poking the bear right now, aren't you?
Poking the bear.
We've had this conversation.
We have.
Yeah.
And thinking about that traditional part about what it meant to, all right, we've got these parents now, and and especially it was like father, right? Father's giving away the bride.
Well, actually, Richard Rohr teaches about this.
Oh, he has a whole teaching, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Richard Rohr has a teaching about this in regards to what happened in humanity that would create humanity feeling like it could possess itself. Not like a spiritual possession or you have to exorcise a devil out of somebody.
Right.
But that in humanity, what would ever take place that a person would think that they could go to a foreign country, scoop people up out of their villages, sail them across the ocean, and sell them on an auction block so that they could be slaves?
Right.
When we talk about human trafficking, we're not only talking about sex trafficking of humans, but actually some of the larger numbers is for forced labor.
Right.
And in the Asian continents and areas, having people be servants or slaves, in that they use the term housekeepers. And so human trafficking occurs, and people are like, if you're not up on the subject, then what you find out is that, like in Indonesia, women are approached to be able to go to Hong Kong, and basically they become indentured servants. The people who are bringing them from Indonesia into Hong Kong, then they pay for their airplane ticket, they get them set up, and actually in Hong Kong, it is a federally ordained business. So there are these companies that can build contracts with private individuals to have people who will take care of their homes, laundry, children, all this thing. But the sign of human trafficking is when people will confiscate your passports. And until you pay that debt back, then the debt of the plane ticket. Now, what we would also know is wretched business people would put an exorbitant interest on the money.
Right.
And so whether that could be overcome, and a lot of reasons why these women specifically get sucked into this is because they're told of the lure of the money that they can make in this different situation. And when they get there, it's swapped and traded. And so whether they're in Hong Kong specifically, they could be told that they're going to be able to be working in homes and things like that, and then they're funneled into the brothels and into the sex trades. So what part of humanity ever comes within yourself that you could take someone from their place of origin and then you could be able to sell them? Well, so it goes back to when in humanity, when we evolved to the place of being from hunters, gatherers to farmers.
Right.
And so then the point about women was that women became super valuable because they would birth children that could work on the farm, and the more workers that you had, the more land you could farm, and then based on that, then you would have greater wealth. So when farmers, and this would be in the sense of not necessarily farmers that we know of today, because machinery has taken over the work of the hand laborer in a lot of parts, but not all parts.
Right.
Then what would happen is when people would have daughters, they recognized that what they had were baby machines. So then when it came to someone wanting to acquire a spouse, it was for the purpose of being able to give birth to multiple children. And so that's where dowry rights came in. So you'd pay a dowry for the opportunity to ask for and to gain the hand of woman in marriage, with the anticipation that you would together be fertile, bear children, and be able to work the land. And so that's where in the language, there's nowhere. Let me ask it as a question. Is there anywhere in the Bible that says the father shall give to the husband?
No.
Yeah. There's no instruction on it at all.
Right. I mean, it does say, like, man will leave his father and mother and be joined together. Right.
Yeah.
But
not a transference of ownership.
No power within there.
Yeah. So when Micaela was 23 or something like that, and she got serious with Adam, I had a conversation with her, and this is a part of for those who are interested in parenting well.
Right.
Don't be afraid of the conversations. Just get out and talk about it and figure out that you'll work it out, And so I just took time in a time together and said, hey, if you guys decide you're going to get married, why don't you just know that Adam doesn't have to ask me for your hand in marriage? And she's like, what? And I'm like, can we just go forward from now on? And I think what was happening, because if this was 4 or 5 years ago or whatever, I was hearing these teachings from Roar,
right?
And I'm like, I never thought about this before, but the reality is, you're not my property. You are my daughter.
Right.
You're my responsibility, but you're not my property. And and so I was talking to Bill Clark last week, and I'm like, hey, dude, you married off your daughter. I said, did you give your daughter away? And how did that all go in the service and stuff like that? And he goes, no, I just walked her down the aisle and put her arm in her husband's arm and said, congratulations, and then performed the ritual ceremony. And so I don't even know what that looks like, because, I mean, we're just going to get there and put it together. And I mean, there's not going to be any special music or any, this is a really, really loose free flow of a ceremony.
Yeah. Cause I think that's where when you're looking at tradition, right? And you'd say the tradition always has, a root somewhere. And especially for that one, you're saying, hey, like, we should probably question some of this, and like, why?
Yeah.
And it goes back to exactly what you talked about. It meant that daughters were possession. And if daughters are our possession, then we should be able to get something when we give that possession away.
Yeah.
And they're like, but there should be a change in mentality. Like, we don't possess people. We don't want to enslave people. And so when I go back to, like when, I talk to my daughter, even though she's, she doesn't really date much, but is to be able to consider and say, you know what, like, they don't have to ask permission, but like, you better know that I want to know them. Like, I want to know that, like there's there's an exchange of love that occurs, but that it's not going to be. I mean, so like as far as that, I just with some of those things in mind, I really would love to be able to. I mean, but I know her well enough that like when it comes down to that, I'm already going to have a relationship with this person.
Yeah.
And so I'm okay with that.
And
I'm okay with knowing that. So,
and I was on a mission trip to Dominican Republic, and when I hit the ground in Atlanta, I got a call from Adam. And how he timed that and figured that out, he probably got a text from Micaela that, hey, we landed in Atlanta or whatever, and then he calls me and he's like, hey, I really want to surprise Micaela, and I want to be in Des Moines when she gets back to be able to propose. He goes, I really should have taken care of this with you before. And I'm like, dude, you don't have anything to take care of. And I'm going to say, period. Now, I think there's some merit in the idea that when children are engaged with the parents of the person that they're going to marry, I think there's merit in an approach of, hey, I'm looking for any red flags. We have our relationship, but you've known your child for the past how many years? Are there any red flags that you would have from our relationship before we commit to this being long term?
mm-hmm.
And people could be like, who would ever have that conversation? And in my mind, I would be like, why wouldn't you want to?
Mm-hmm.
So then, there's merit in that. There's also merit in saying, I wouldn't be. I taught Micah. I mean, we talked about this on the live show. I told Micah he could ask me any question he wanted. Just I reserve the right to say no. But I would also ask the question, hey, if we're to get together long term,
mm-hmm.
as parents of your own child, are you committed to being a blessing in actively a part of our lives as a couple? And they could say no.
Mm-hmm.
Or does it foster a foundation of conversation that allows for, and at least then you could, you could have a person who would be like, yeah, my mom and dad weren't for me being together with this person. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, slow down. Is this reasonable? Or are you going to be able to navigate, okay, mom and dad, this is my decision. I'm going to make the decision on how I see it, but how are we going to navigate this together? Because what I really need is I need support in my decision for what's going on. Mm-hmm. But see, again, these are questions of furthering the conversation versus what may dig into as points of contention mm-hmm. and barriers in relationship for the future.
Right.
And I'm purposefully, just for the sake of being on the record, not getting crass. Mm-hmm. But I quite frankly, if Adam was a dick, I would have had that conversation with Micaela.
Right.
And saying, hey, if you're making this decision and you're going forward with it, just know I'm going to be struggling with it, and you're going to be dealing with me. As long as I'm alive, I'm going to be struggling with this unless there's a motion and movement of personal growth and things like that. But if he's mean to you, if there's abuse, there are things where I'm not afraid to step into with the law for your sake and your safety, because it doesn't matter how old you get. Your mom's still your mom. Your dad's still your dad.
Right.
You just grow up more. And, now I'm not a helicopter parent either. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you guys got to, check in, and I'm more than willing to be available. And, I mean, let them live and let live. So, right. I mean, that's my approach.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, I think what we're saying is, as you're raising children, you just think about these conversations as they go. You probably won't have this conversation when they're 8,
Right.
but when they start getting interested in the other people in life, then it just is. You have to start talking about it early, because people, as they grow up, start dealing with emotion of feelings towards other people. And as they feel towards other people, what are they going to do with those emotions? And what is a, just a healthy way,
Right.
to be able to do that. And so, yeah, marriage.
So keeping the conversation alive and making sure that you're not just trying to shut things down because you feel like this is going to be uncomfortable and I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Like if you do that too much, it's going to become a pattern, and then all of a sudden conversation's not going to happen. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Not Micaela as much, but Micah really appreciates like the give and take that we have. I never have a question on where Micah stands on things that he's thinking. I mean, whether it's myself lying to myself or my perceived reality. But once again, we take space to be able to have conversations that go to that place. And and really part of what I've done to be able to have those conversations with him is to prepare him for when he has children, that he can have those same conversations.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the goal of parenting, right? Is just say, trying to equip you to be able to, whatever journey of life hits. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then to know, like, if we haven't talked about it yet, you can feel free to talk to me about it.
Let's
it's
talk.
It's open.
Yeah.
Conversation is good.
Yeah, it really is. It's good stuff.
Right.
So that's all happening. So by Friday, when the trailer comes out, I'll be in Winter, Wisconsin. By Sunday, when the episode plays, they'll have been married, and I'm at home tucked into my bed getting some rest for the next week. That's how this weekend's going.
You're not going to be in bed that early, though.
7 p.m.
Right.
Hey, dude, that's fair. That's totally fair. I won't be in bed that early, and so
yeah, you're usually up much later than that.
I have to figure out how to navigate. Like I want to be more productive in the nighttime, but I don't want to be a disturbance within the home. And I've got to figure out how to do that, because it's me trying to be quiet around the house turns into me being a couch potato watching episodes of TV shows that don't even matter to me. Right. And so I've been thinking about that. It goes down this line. I think this is a great question to ask our audience.
Yeah.
Have you taken time to consider the bad habits of COVID that you've developed? And I think what's healthy, you don't have to change them. You can keep on doing bad habits. I mean, you can.
It's a personal choice, right?
Right. I mean, this is a funny point. When we were on vacation as a family last July, we made homemade ice cream. Well, Adam was used to having homemade ice cream made with skim milk. And that's not how I make homemade ice cream. Heavy whipping cream, half and half, the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, it got us into this whole family squabble. And by squabble, I mean that we're always laughing about it.
Right.
Because he's a skim milk drinker. But like I've habitually been an offender of like, if there's half and half in the house, if I'm eating a cookie, I'm drinking half and half. Cereal, Life cereal with half and half on it, glorious. It all stemmed from, I grew up in Michigan and we had blueberry farms.
Right.
We'd go and pick the blueberries. So as you go and pick the blueberries, you got to do something with the blueberries. So my mom would take them, you put them in a quart freezer bag, drop them into the freezer. Well, if you take those blueberries and you pour them into a bowl frozen and you pour half and half over it and then add 2 tablespoons of sugar, this is like blueberry ice cream. And it's absolutely fantastic. Now, I say all of that to come to a place where over the course of my life, now my dad was a middle of the night eater. So there was something, Micah would always laugh, like in his formative years growing up, he would bust a gut hysterically because about the time I was going to sleep, he'd be waking up to be able to go do the newspaper thing or whatever. Okay. But if there were Hostess cakes, ho-hos, or whatever, he could come out and the box is empty and there's 9 wrappers just laying on the counter and I'd clean up after myself. But if there's half and half in the fridge while that's going down, there's not half and half left. Right. So middle of the night eater can happen. Like it's in waves and rolls or seasons, and stuff. I don't always do it, but I can have a propensity to do it. My mom's homemade chocolate cake with chocolate chip frosting. Oh yeah. You cut off the bottom half, leave the cake in the garbage. This frosting is so thick, and what's seeped into this black cherry chocolate cake. Oh my gosh, so good. With half and half, boo, over the top, over the moon. I mean, just so good. Yeah. But I mean, 2 weeks ago, I'm getting on the scale, and actually, it was after a Sunday after church. I'm like, my jeans aren't buttoning like they should be. What's going on here? I'm like, I feel so big. And I got on the scale. I'm like, well, no doubt, dumbass. You feel so big because you are.
You gained some.
Well, and I had gained my COVID-20 before winter hit this year. Yeah. So anyway, I am, for the sake of my health, back on my Mediterranean diet that the doctor put me on 4 or 5 years ago, and back to healthy living. But what that does is that much like Heather and I had a conversation earlier today, I have more energy. So when I have more energy, then I'm like, twiddle my thumbs. Well, here's the thing: COVID bad habit. Right. If the way you're going to put yourself to sleep is drinking beer, you're not going to lose the middle ground fat, right? So got to change that. So contemplation, what COVID bad habits do you got? You can't make a motion to change into any direction if you're not taking time to just figure it out, And so what COVID bad habits,
Yeah, because I think that everyone can probably connect with some kind of thing that they've attached themselves to. And so I mean, I had also gained one when the gym closed, and then when we weren't headed out as much to grocery stores or to restaurants or whatever, then it was like, all right, so we're gonna cook here and we're going to make sure we have, and then it was always like, well, we're stuck inside. Let's eat some snacks. Let's do desserts all the time. Let's make sure to bring all that richness into, and then it was like, oh, yeah, well, this isn't too bad. It's not too bad. And then you're like, oh, wait a second. I'm a little bit more round than I was pre-COVID. So that is obviously there.
Yeah.
Trying to be able, so I'm interested in this Mediterranean diet, though. What is this? What's it include?
Well, so just to give everybody context, basically what the doctor did back in Iowa, my blood pressure was going up, and even as he was increasing the medications, it wasn't holding my blood pressure down. And he's like, we've got to figure something out. And So by the way, I'm putting you on a strict diet. Now, I'm enough of a lemming in like if I go to the doctor and the doctor says do this, because I'm really that way about if I give my word to someone, even like if down the road there would be a conflict, I would keep my word over what my preference would be or whatever, because I gave my word, to do that. And so the doctor said, you need to do this. And I said, okay. Well, and because I had seen complications with my own dad's health in regards to all of the medications he was on. I knew I was just way too young to get laden up on meds. And I knew that once you hit a certain point, then you have to take medications to offset the other medications and take care of the health of all the other organs and stuff. So I wanted to fight for that for myself. And so in that, he put me on this Mediterranean diet, and he's like, hey, Mayo Clinic's got a great, take a look at it and blah, 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 blah. So I got on there, and basically it's fish, chicken, and vegetables. And it's not necessarily going keto. But then I got a standard of sodium that I had to abide by. A daily allotment for sodium for the average adult is 2,000 to 2,500 milligram. My daily dosage for sodium is 1,700, which would match really closely to the amount of calories that I should be taking in a day, 1,750 to 1,850. I could maintain at 2,000, but if I'm like looking at that, and then because I have been committed to being a couch potato, that means, for those of you who are new listeners, that I actively pursue not being active. And
actively pursue not being active.
I do. And so how that has shown up in the past is that, it's the Enneagram 9 in me that just wants to be like, oh, come on, I can't just sit here and what's the easy way out, and to be able to do this. Now, so then he's like, hey, Mediterranean diet, and you need to walk. I'm like, I need to walk how much? Like 3 times a week? He goes, oh, no, I'm taking all the barriers off you.
Just keep walking until...
I'm like, 10,000 steps? He goes, actually, that's a fallacy. He goes, I'd like to see you between 15 and 20,000 steps a day, and you could do that 5 to 7 days a week, and that would be good for you. Now, when I went to Hong Kong, we hit 24,000 steps in a day, and you're going everywhere, walking, up hills, down hills, and all that stuff. That about killed me off. And back when I lived in Iowa, I could clock in 8,000 steps around the church and with everything going on normally. But that was another thing that I noticed when I looked at my steps, is that my steps had dropped by 2/3. And so had to actually start working towards, all right, and walking is a part of the whole thing. But 1,700 milligrams of sodium, when you see how much sodium is in one slice of bread, it could be 30%.
Right.
Chicken stock, beef stock. You start doing that. So I don't even have to try to do keto. If I just go for sodium count and watch sodium count, I get an incredible elimination. Now, what really irritated the crap out of me is that natural things have sodium in it.
Right.
So if you're eating raw snap peas, you'd be like, well, the calories aren't there. No, but there's a sodium count to it. So then there become...
And it's natural. Natural sodium.
Yeah, just like natural sugars. It's not processed sugar added. Right. We had cauliflower mashed potatoes last night. And on it said that there were 2 grams of sugar or 4 grams of sugar, but it said added sugars, 0. In this cauliflower,
there's already
sugar. Well, because there's 7 grams of carbohydrates. And what do carbohydrates turn into? Carbohydrates are, turned into sugar within your system. Right. And so, i.e. beer. especially craft beers that, in regards to that, you got 300 calories, 350 calories in a beer. And I don't even know how many grams of carbs is in one of those. But I mean, so all of those things. So if I come back to the Mediterranean of what's going on, ain't no big deal. And my body responds very well to it. So then why am I running away from it? Just for the sake of half and half on Life cereal is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I started eating too many potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, potatoes are, high carbs and starch and all of that. But yeah, so I think that was also the incorporation. Even though I was doing mostly chicken and fish, I also was incorporating more potatoes. So
yeah,
just finding that alternative is good.
Yeah. So we've moved into bed of lettuce, no dressing, no salad dressing, bed of lettuce, because if you start even doing balsamic vinaigrette, the EVVO, the fat content's so high. So then that's where, you're looking at your macros or micros, and I'm not a dietitian. I don't know. All I know is that I got to a place where even being 20 pounds heavier than I was, feeling miserable, I was still 35 pounds from the peak of when I had this blood pressure issue. I mean, I weighed in at 235, 237, no problem at all. I'm still 30 pounds lighter than that.
Right.
But I feel awful. And so, there's the goal. I mean, so, bad habit. That's why I bought the King's Templar book, or Knights Templar books, and stuff. And so that's the thing. One of the things that I'm doing is not only eliminate, but then move into a replace. And so I'm kind of working on it hasn't been in full effect yet,
right,
but I'm working on a curfew for Steve that when 10 o'clock in the evening comes, then I'm going to start reading until I can't read no more, if my eyes get crossed or whatever. And then I'm eliminating the screen activity in my brain that just, and the way that the services are built, it's made to binge. Right. So it just rolls over into the next one, and all of a sudden you're 4.5.
It only gives you like 3 seconds to decide.
Yeah. Are we doing this? Right. Are we doing this?
Might as well do another one. It's coming up.
Yeah. And so, and there's another season that intertwines with all that, because with Earthen Warehouse Studio opening up, then there's the part of where, well, if I go to bed at night and then up in the morning to get in and to, get my hands in clay and, fingers on pencils and sketches and all that stuff, that'll feel better than, I got to go do this construction project.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Quite frankly, we would be interested if you wanted to comment in the comment section about COVID bad habits that you picked up. I mean, maybe it's road rage.
I've always got that.
So I bring it up because on my drive in, in this lovely commute, which I don't mind the drive. It doesn't feel long. It's 25 minutes. But there is this one car in the express lane that insisted on not speeding up or not going with traffic, clogging everything up.
Right. So
I come to the middle lane and I go around this person. Well, then they speed up. And so I mean, it's no big deal. I was driving how I would drive. I'm in the middle lane, blah, 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 blah. I literally, since I moved to Chicago, have honked my horn twice. Today was one. And this idiot who was going at a snail's pace decided to get in a hurry right before Peterson and Cicero and almost clipped the front of my vehicle. So the person who was doggy way back there had to get in a hurry about getting in front of me to be able to pull off in the same exit that I was. And there was plenty of room behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
It gets bad.
Angry.
That's all, for me, that, COVID was, and traffic in Chicago was all of a sudden, non-existent.
There was no traffic.
Right. Nobody was on the road. So you're like, anytime, and I'd go out oh, man, this is glorious. And then it was and then there was just that slow tick. It was oh, there's more people on the road. More people are going out. Then you're now it's almost full blown back to, where it was. And then it makes it worse. I mean, you get, Chicago roads and bumps and then they got this Montrose Bridge that they're taking a year and a half to replace, and this causes me lots of anger, because then you're going through neighborhoods to try to cut around it, and you're trying to figure out how the best routes and all of where should I still avoid, where is it going to, and you're never going to avoid people.
No.
So
the question that I had for myself as I was getting angry is it really about road rage? Mm-hmm. Or am I an angry person and road rage just lets my anger come to the top? I don't know.
Wow. I don't know. Because I don't feel like I'm an angry person, but sometimes on the road I'm this gets frustrating to me.
Yeah.
I mean, because I always I talked to Heather about this, because if somebody's going 20 miles an hour, it drives me crazy. If there's nobody else in front of you, you shouldn't just be going 20. It's not 20 down a regular road.
Yeah.
Go 25 at least. I always say 30 is a good, down Montrose or whatever, but when I get stuck behind people who are just this is a lazy day for me. And no, other people got to go places. Come on. Let's move. I like to get to a destination.
Yeah.
And you're keeping me from getting to a destination because I don't want to sit in the car anymore. Mm-hmm. So I've been trying to do better with it. Whether it's, pulling up music, bringing it. So when I come home, whether it's, bringing Tyson back home from school, then we're usually pulling up things. And that's where I always like to, Metallica song comes on, Tyson, what song is it?
Yeah.
And he's pulling out Metallica, and I'm and he'll even pull out the album and where it's located, which song number it is on that album. I'm
really?
Yeah. I'm this is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm so it leads us to good conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad you know that. I don't know that.
Right. Wow.
But
he's hearing Metallica on a totally different level.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't complain about it, but he definitely has got a lot more metal in him than I ever did. But I'd listen to Metallica, and I'd listen to some other within the same genre of that, but there's a station that's all metal all the time, and I'm all right, we'll put it on for a little bit, and he's oh yeah, I know, Lamb of God. I don't know if you're familiar with Lamb of God. They're metal. And he's yeah, you're listening to I'm no, I never was, really picked up Lamb of God. I know who they are. I've heard some of their songs, but I mean, it's what I would, it's close to death metal, wouldn't you say, John? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's in the death metal range.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things I try to take my mind off of the people who are around me and just say, all right, let's spend some time here then. I've got the time. I'm not moving. This is where I'm going to spend the time.
Yeah.
And it's made it better. Taking the perspective.
Yeah. I just know that there's just an awful lot going on the sidewalks and the streets of Chicago that, like, and it's state law that if a pedestrian steps down into the walkway, you have to stop.
Pedestrian always has the right of way.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's cool, but I would love for pedestrians to be aware of their surroundings.
Right.
And, like, when I'm at a stop sign and you're at the crosswalk and I'm stopped, go ahead and step off and walk across. I'll stay stopped. But why in the world would you be at the crosswalk, the cars are stopped, but when they go to enter into the middle of the intersection to cross over, then you decide to step off? I'm like, gosh, I just pray this. God, help me to be courteous and to make way for the pedestrian, not because it's the law, just for the sake of humanity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good thing to think about.
Yesterday, I was running errands. I go down Tower Road. There's a four-way stop. I'm this close to never taking Tower Road again, and because I can take Hibbert over to Green Bay or Hibbert over to Willow, but there's this four-way stop at the lagoons. So a grandma and little girl are crossing on my right. The two cars that could go either way aren't going either way. And there's a gentleman riding his bike across. Now notice, the four-way stop is not going anywhere because of pedestrians. The grandma and the little girl come to the curb. Little girl's having a problem with her bike. I'm concerned about the other person hitting the little girl. But the two cars cross, and they cross together. Think, fine, it's my turn. I'll go. I'm not going to hurt the little girl. I go through. The guy who crossed on the bike decided he was going to cross, and he shoved off as I'm going through. I'm like, really, dude? I mean, yeah, you have the right of way,
Yeah.
but timing's everything.
Yeah, and I don't want to hit you.
Right, no.
Right. Not out here trying to create chaos and
All right, so that's
murder.
that soapbox of all that. COVID bad habits. What are yours?
Yeah, what are yours?
What are your COVID bad habits?
And how do you plan? I know you mentioned the word replacement. I talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we can't just say I'm going to stop it, but we have to be able to fill it with something, or else chances are it's just going to come back.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that as Amy and I have talked about it, even with the couple weeks that we've been doing the Mediterranean diet, we feel so much better. Like, I think but to your point, okay, rich foods, lots of desserts, potatoes, like we're not even doing pizza night anymore.
Yeah.
Whoa. Like for 9 months, Thursday nights were pizza night. Marcaromas. Hashtag not a sponsor. Hopefully buys lots of plates from Earthen Warehouse.
Right.
But, Amy and I were talking about it, and that, I think that's the other part, is when you get a reward from the action that you choose to do and the opposite of. And so when you are feeling better, and you know what? I love days when I haven't been drinking beer and I wake up and I feel refreshed. Put enough of those together, it's like the feeling good to be able to accomplish other things. It's a good reward. So I think there's remove, replace, reward. I think if people get in tune with what am I looking for in that, what is the reward?
Right.
And I mean, we can talk about like hitting rock bottom, like with addictions and stuff like that. At that point, survival's the reward. This is, hey, and that's what brought me to the plate. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to have to lose 60 pounds. So I'm going to lose 20.
Right.
Because gosh, it's going to be the hurdle to be able to do that is going to be so much greater. So,
Right.
and if other people have other ways to be able to grab onto that, and
Yeah, and I think the reward is also good because it can be something that's not a reward like I need to, buy, or I need to do this, or I need, but think about what like the single reward would be for, and you as an individual.
yeah,
Like, what is it that brings that good connection in your brain?
yeah,
Because that's the parts your body's going to want to know. All right, if we're not, this is what we usually are feeling. Why can't we get there? And then you're going to say, all right, I'm going to replace, but I still need to feed that with something, get that reward.
yeah, yeah.
Good points.
All right.
All right, jot all those down, get them on out there, and let's have a further conversation about it. All right, Steve, I think we're going to probably wrap up for today. What do you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think if anybody was looking for a meandering from us,
Yeah,
they certainly got
they
it.
got it.
A couple
Check.
surprises, a little bit of advice.
Learned some new things today.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And the request for fan art continues to go out, and so
Submit your fan art, even if you take a picture of it and send it to us.
yeah, then we can put it up there.
If you're not near.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great, and then we will continue. You can know that again, we're working in the background on other people to interview. We're also working in the background on different sources and resources. Quite frankly, we're overdue. We're ready for another Fringe event,
Right.
and so we're gonna dive into that, and just come to the table with lots of stuff that you may or may not have considered in regards to the Fringe.
Right.
I might dive into some 1920s psychological, medical, mental, all that stuff. Kind of around the time of Frankenstein.
Wow. All right.
All right.
Sounds good.
Fact or fiction. All right. Like, subscribe,
Do your job out there. And
share. Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring. All right, everybody.
All
Glad
right.
that you stuck around, and we will see you next time. Take care.
See you later, everybody.